reminding you that you are government. The Jake Merrick Show, the new Freedom 96.9.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. 7:35 a.m., 57 degrees outside this beautiful Wednesday morning. My next guest with me in studio is Representative Tom Gann. He had an interim study up at the Capitol yesterday with the focus being flock cameras or license plate readers. Very controversial, lots of things to discuss, so let's dig into it. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me, Jake. It was an awesome study yesterday. And
that's what I heard.
We really pulled the veil back on what these flock cameras are doing and what they're really all about. And I just want to thank the people that contributed to that interim study, like Don Spencer from OK2A. We had the representative from the City Council of Pryor was there, Chris Gontier, he spoke. And then we had input from Marvin Goodman, who is a former county commissioner in Logan County, and then Chris Banning was able to participate with his expertise. So it was just an awesome study.
And I know that Jonathan Heisey out in Piedmont, city councilman out there, he was listening in. I'm not sure if he was there or listening in, but last time you were on, he said, hey, make sure you know that there's a councilman out here that is in complete agreement with what you were talking about concerning these cameras. And essentially we're saying we've got questions. Not saying that they need to be done away with completely. Maybe they have a place, but there needs to be parameters set in. Is this the position, or do you think that we should just do away with them altogether?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to define what they really need to do in the law. Right now, they're operating lawlessly. They don't have authorization to collect that data and to use it for anything other than the compulsory insurance law. And then, as we found out from ODOT yesterday, they're not even lawful for being on the right-of-ways in some of these municipalities where you might have, like in Pryor, where you have Highway 69 going through the city limits, and they're on state right-of-way. So we have some real issues with this.
Yeah, that was something that was shocking to know that they are being installed and have been installed.
Yes,
but there's no provision for it in law.
But that seems to be the MO of the flock camera company. They are known throughout other states that they have been in to totally ignore regulation, law, and just to go with it. And I think they need to be trimmed back in that regard. So I think the legislation that we need to develop is first and foremost would protect the privacy of individuals, because this is a privacy issue. It is a Fourth Amendment issue. But for the state of Oklahoma, there is no law right now that allows or authorizes law enforcement to use that data for any other purpose. And we've seen the results of that by the evidence being dismissed and suppressed in lawsuits that are trying to convict people from doing bad things. You know, they're trying to convict them, but now they have to throw this evidence out because it's been collected unlawfully. Wow.
Okay. So let's go back to where this began in Oklahoma. So we're talking about the compulsory insurance laws back in 2016, correct?
Yes. In 2016, Senate Bill 359 was passed, and they talked about that the uninsured motorist was right at 26%. And so it was passed upon the assumption of that statistic. But however, by the time the law really was passed and came into effect, the actual figure was about half of that.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that beforehand. Just talk about how this was, how this began here in the state of Oklahoma, how these cameras were introduced on this assumption that there was these massive amounts of drivers driving around without insurance. However, there was already being curbed because of some other measures taking place, right? This is the ability of the sheriffs to go and actually take the plate of the uninsured motorists.
In the 2013-14 timeline, the statistic was that high. However, the legislature passed a law to allow sheriffs to, if they found that you were without insurance or registration, they could take your tag. Then you'd have to go to the courthouse and get it and pay a $250 fine. That had a tremendous effect on that percentage. And by the time this bill was heard, it was actually almost half of what the 26% showed. Right. So even the offender who came up, who was selected to utilize the plate readers for the compulsory insurance law, complained about it in a Frontier article in 20 that the study was flawed because the statistics were off.
And I think that's an important point to highlight, because it's not as if we don't have these flock cameras, we don't have anything. No, there's already measures and abilities of the law enforcement to do something about criminals. We're talking about those that don't have insurance, so not high-level offenders or anything. But at least they were able to do something to curb that and to handle it. And so now we look at other issues. We're trying to capture criminals that are driving down the road. This is the argument from law enforcement is this is a needed resource so we can actually find them and capture them. And so what's the response to that?
Well, it is a tool, and and it's a useful tool. And they do have several anecdotal stories that show the effectiveness of the tool. However, a lot of what they do with the data is unconstitutional. So when they collect this data, they are collecting this data and storing this data. And so when another law enforcement agency comes and accesses that data, that's an unlawful, unwarranted search. And and that is nationwide. So this is the rub, is where is this data, who has this data, and who has access to it. And as you saw in the interim study yesterday, in the video where the man was stopped on the highway by a law enforcement officer, and he had a record of the man being in Oklahoma from Texas. He knew he was in there twice in January and once in March. Where does he get that?
Right.
Why is that stored? And why does he get to pull it up instantaneously and question the guy when he then gets a little defensive and the officer becomes suspicious? So we have a real problem with the data. Who has the data?
Exactly.
Why is it stored? And why are we casting this broad net over innocent, law-abiding citizens just to capture a few bad guys?
Yeah, here's Representative Tom Gann talking about the interim study held yesterday up at the Capitol concerning flock cameras and license plate readers. That opens up that discussion, of course, of tracking travel, which you guys were not able to get into necessarily in that interim study yesterday. Because that's kind of a whole nother conversation. When we talk about the tax associated with the miles traveled.
Right, and the road user charge the road user charge concept and the task force is like the compulsory insurance law, where they have this statistic, and we really need to look at the data very, very diligently to know what's really going on. So with the road user charge, they're making these assumptions that we are inundated with electric vehicles everywhere, and so now we have to find some way, to offset that because we're missing out on the motor fuel tax. But you're making these assumptions, and you really have to dig down. Is this really happening? And when they mention the fair miles, this whole concept of fairness is just a socialist model for the way they tax. So if you drive a 4-wheel drive truck and I drive a Prius, why is that unfair if you buy what you want and drive what you want? I mean, there's nothing unfair about it. So that's a misnomer.
Yeah, and should the man with the F-350 pay more in gas tax because he's got a heavier truck, going to do more damage to the road? No. I mean, you pay it at the pump. You buy more diesel. It is what it is.
It is what it is. That's right. So we do not want to make any decisions based upon some presumption out here that's false. And that's my point. And that's the same flaw with the road user charge and tracking you by the mile as it is with the compulsory insurance law. So we need to make sure that we deal in reality here and that we're not just being sold down the river for some sort of concept that's not really real.
Well, here was Representative Gann talking about surveillance, flock cameras, license plate readers, all the implications of that. I'm going to go a quick break so we can come back and dive back into this conversation. And I want to highlight some of the real concerns connected to flock cameras and surveillance of people and license plate readers. So we'll get into some of that coming back. But first, big shout out to ICS Concrete Coatings.
Welcome back to the Jake Merrick Show, where truth is the only news on the new Freedom 96.9.
All right, guys, welcome back to the last leg of the show, 7:48 a.m., 57 degrees outside. And here with Representative Tom Gann talking about the recent interim study up at the Capitol on the House side, dealing with flock cameras, license plate readers, surveillance. Representative Gann, welcome back.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, Why is this, before we dig back into all the details, why is this so important, this whole conversation? I feel like I've talked about this many times. You and I have had many conversations even on the show. Why do we keep on bringing this up? Are we beating a dead horse, or is it that important?
Well, I think it's important to remember that we are a nation of laws. We are supposed to uphold and defend the Constitution. We swore an oath to do that. And at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. When you don't have law to really allow you to do what you need to do, then we need to step back and take a breather and then make sure that the law is there before we allow somebody else to decide what that is.
And I believe that people right now, Americans right now, are paranoid and suspicious of the government. There's not trust. We don't trust the government by and large. And there's concern about, will they be able to just walk through my front door because they flash a badge, just come on in? And then the other argument that even they mentioned at the Senate hearing was, hey, you know what? You don't have a right to privacy when it comes to your license plate. Like, that was never intended to be concealed from law enforcement. It's out there, visible and open, so we have the right to scan that.
Yes, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, that's true. That's why you have a plate on there. What we're talking about is the search of data. Now, when there was another piece of legislation when the compulsory insurance law was in, and that was a piece of legislation that allowed the OTA or law enforcement to access the OTA, the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, tag data. But what they needed to do that, what OTA said was, you need a warrant, you need a court order, or you need some sort of subpoena in order to get that data. Yeah. And so this distrust of government is in our DNA. Our founding fathers didn't trust government because they knew the heart of man is deceitful. Who can know it? I mean, and people will lord it over you if given the chance. So that's why we're a nation of laws and not of men.
That's right. That's right. Those laws are there to protect our freedom, they're given by God.
That's right.
And not to grant freedom.
Yes.
So we must always remember that.
And there's got to be a check and balance, and there's got to be a reasonable check and balance, and we don't need the type of attitude that we saw in the Senate interim study that you were in, where we saw Senator Brooks ask former Tulsa Police Chief Wendell Franklin, "Is there an opt-out provision in this?" And he said, "Yeah, don't drive." And that's just not reasonable. Right. That's not a reasonable attitude.
Now, his argument was, we require driver's license. So if you say, well, I don't want to drive without a driver's license, well, then don't drive. So does that correlate? Is that an adequate argument now if they did implement surveillance and license plate readers and that becomes law? Well, same as with the driver's license, don't drive.
Well, it is. It's just not our society. You have to have a communication device to communicate nowadays, and you have to be able to drive. We live in a broad, open society where things are far apart. We don't have mass transit that takes you everywhere. So it's just not a reasonable expectation. And so we need cooperation, and we need to have an honest talk about protecting people's privacy, because the Fourth Amendment is there and will always be there. And no matter what, the technology doesn't nullify what's in the Constitution.
Right. And that's the scary thing about this, is how rapidly technology is advancing.
Yes.
And when we look forward to where this could go, I mean, right now we've already seen, you might say the proverbial camel's nose under the tent with the compulsory insurance laws. Yes. And we're doing this to track those that don't have insurance, that are driving without insurance. And then we say, well, we could actually use this for other means too. And then what is the next step beyond that? And then how does technology advance to become even more invasive?
Yes, and we've seen the Attorney General of the state of Texas, A.G. Paxton. He sued Meta because they were collecting biometric data when you were looking at your Facebook through the iPhone, and they sued him in $1.4 billion lawsuit.
Right.
And now he's after General Motors as well for collecting driver data and activities that is unlawful. So we're in this society where all this stuff is being collected, and when it's collected here through your tag and everything that's associated with that tag to identify who you are, that needs to be protected from unwarranted searches and
seizures. Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, so I want to play this quick clip because this comes from the godfather of AI, artificial intelligence. His work really started it all concerning AI. His name's Jeffrey Hinton. He was on a 60 Minutes interview, And, well, this is what he said about his concerns in the advancement of this technology.
Does humanity know what it's doing?
No. I think we're moving into a period when, for the first time ever, we may have things more intelligent than us.
You believe they can understand?
Yes.
You believe they are intelligent?
Yes.
You believe these systems have experiences of their own and can make decisions based on those experiences?
In the same sense as people do, yes.
Are they conscious?
I think they probably don't have much self-awareness at present. So in that sense, I don't think they're conscious.
Will they have self-awareness, consciousness?
Oh, yes. I think they will in time.
And so human beings will be the second most intelligent beings on the planet.
Yeah.
That's scary.
That sounds demonic, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, that is scary, and when you overlay artificial intelligence on the data that they've collected through the automatic license plate readers and get this predictability of where you might go next, it's pretty scary. It's a scary thing.
It is. I brought it up in the interim study, and I know. I mean, you almost feel like you're the tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist, and
Yes.
you play clips like this. But I mean, this is coming from the guy that started, the godfather of AI.
Yes.
And his real concerns. Elon Musk has come out with the same kind of concerns, saying that AI, he believes, would be the end of humanity if let unchecked. And so we must stay on top of and in control of all of this technology instead of letting it go unhinged, unchecked. And I can just feel the eye rolls right now from some out there listening saying, well, we're talking about scanning the license plate. We're not talking about robots taking over the world. But I think that this is part of the same conversation about the use of technology.
Yes. Well, and like I said again, it's not really reading the license plate. It's where this data is stored and who access, and then it's the multiple elements of data that can be attributed to this license plate, and then forming an illegal search and seizure. And we as human beings can't do this to ourselves. This is what it's almost. You have to be very careful what you're going to do to yourself here through the use of this technology.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and to highlight something local, I mean, we had an issue in Edmond.
Yes.
What was that surrounding with license plate readers?
Well, you have some cities that display and are very open and transparent about who they're sharing their data with. And, of course, you have Dale City that has about 65 other entities, municipalities and organizations, the Texas Financial Crimes Unit, the ATF, FBI. They will display where all the agencies and entities that they share their data with. The problem with Edmond is that they were not open and transparent with where their network is and who they share their data with. And so when NonDoc asked for a Freedom of Information Act request, they just ignored it. So they're not willing to be transparent, and yet they are government. The people. You're the government. You work for the people. It should be transparent where they are sharing your data and what entities that they're sharing with. And the thing that was really scary to me that I found that it just dawned on me, just kind of one of those things that, oh wow, I just really didn't understand it to be a global thing. When people globally can access this data, law enforcement, Interpol, they have access to all of this. This is a global access. And that is something that is really disturbing.
Oh, exactly. Especially when the conversation is breached, thinking about the UN possibly having jurisdiction here in the U.S.
Yes.
And are we going to submit to an international organization outside of our nation of laws? And so big questions that we must consider. I mean, concerning this information, like you said, it's not about scanning the license plate. It's about where that information goes and who has access to it.
Right. And then the unlawful viewing of it without a warrant, subpoena, or court order.
Yes. Well, I love the quote you brought up with John Locke. John Locke, 1689, huge influencer on our founding fathers. And the quote that you said was, well, you have it there. Go ahead.
Okay, it says, wherever law ends, tyranny begins. If the law be transgressed to another's harm, and whosoever in authority exceeds the power given him by the law, and makes use of the force he has under his command to compass that upon the subject which the law allows not, ceases in that to be a magistrate. And acting without authority may be opposed as any other man who by force invades the right of another.
So lots of words there, but
that was written in 1689.
1689, the same principle applies.
It is.
Talking about the force invading the rights of another,
yes.
Whether that be physical force or technology.
Right, and so we hear a lot about law enforcement saying, "Oh, we're providing safety. We're providing safety," and you know as well as I do, government cannot keep you safe.
That's right.
Our government is designed to protect your freedom. And Teddy Roosevelt said that's one of the three things that'll destroy this nation if we put safety over duty.
Man, so powerful. Thank you, Representative Gann, for your time today.
All right, it's good to be here, Jake.
All right, great stuff. If you missed any of it, go to the archive shows, freedom969.com. Get registered to vote. The deadline is coming up.